Hello, this is Bruno Backer. So I'm starting a little mini-series on the song Autumn Leaves here, and with this first video I'm going to talk about the melody. It is very important to know the melody in different places, as many places as we can think, all over the fretboard and possibly even in different registers. So let's break it down. The first part, there is a very obvious sequencing going on. I'm doing it, by the way, in G minor. So ba-do-do-be, first phrase, ba-da-do-be, second, da-da-do-be, ba-do-do-ba. We have 4 times a phrase that's very symmetrical. That's why we're calling it a sequence. It's more or less the same rhythm, but also harmonically it's the same shape. You know, the last note of each one of those phrases is the third of the chord that it lands into. You can check on the lead sheet, which I'll add in the notes, and also the first note of each one of those 4 phrases is the tonic of the chord that it starts from. Okay, so it starts on the tonic of one chord and it lands on the third of the next chord. Okay, so here's our first phrase. It's going to be, well, actually, let me just play it as simply as possible. So it starts on the G, so we have G, A, B flat, and it goes to E flat, which is the third of the C minor chord. So clearly, we're not going to play it like this on the one string, even though it would be a good exercise. Trust me on that one. But just to show you the shape of that melody, we have 3 notes that would be consecutive, you know, scale-wise, and then there's a leap into that E flat here. So it would make more sense to do that at least over 2 strings. So I could do this, G, A, B flat here, and then my E flat on the first string. So I'm starting with my first finger on the second string, right? And I go like this, ba-da-da, and then here I roll my 4th finger, ba-da-do-da, and then land on the first string. Now, since that sequence descends, da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da, 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 you know, it starts on the lower note each time. So I could do the same, starting with the same finger on the same string, right? So, ba-da-da-wee, starting on the G, and then the F is the start of the next note, ba-da-do. Then the next phrase starts down on E flat, ba-da-do. And then it's the very last phrase, the 4th one, starts on D. And here I'm going to have a slightly different thing here, right? So to recap, this. Finishing on D. Okay, so that's the first, what is it, first 4 measures. No, actually the first 8 measures, right? So first 8 measures. And then that repeats, but it ends differently. You know, to kind of give a sense of closure to that first part. So, it's not hard to do this, you know, particularly the first phrase, it's all within 4 frets. However, here I don't really like this stretch. This is not so great, right? And we have the exact same one starting from E flat. And then there's another stretch on the D. However, it resolves slightly differently. So what we could do, we could still play those notes exactly where they were, but alter the fingerings. So instead of going, instead of using 3 different fingers, I could use the same finger on the first 2 notes, and then finish like this. And it's going to make a lot more sense here on that F. No more stretches. Same exact shape here on the E flat. And then almost the same here from the D. Right? So let me recap here. I'll play this in time. 1, 2. Actually, I said first finger, same first finger. So 1, 2. Now, rhythmically, you can interpret this in a variety of ways. Lead sheets tend to be oversimplified. It might be ba da da wa, ba da 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 da, and nobody's going to sing it like that, and nobody's going to play it like that, right? So be a bit loose on that. But that will happen if you listen to many different versions and you get inspired by the way people phrase that melody. Okay, so for now we're really more thinking in terms of the notes. So what I just did, starting on my second string, let's see if I could do it again, starting on different strings. So I'm going to use the same fingering. I'm going to go 1, 1, and then I have to make that little adjustment to get to that E flat, right? From the F, from the E flat, and then finally from the D note. Here I'm going to roll because I'm on the same fret to get that B flat, right? So that was starting from the third string using more or less the same fingering that I used previously from the second string. I mean, the thing that the concept here is going 1, 1 for, okay, from the first two notes of the phrase. So we did that on the third string. Let's do that on the fourth string. So that's going to be down an octave now. From the G, sorry. So I have G, and then my melody is here from the F, from E flat, and the D we don't really have it. We could do it open. Let's not worry about that. Then we would switch to the string lower than that, the fifth string. Again, we're exploring here. I'm not saying all these ways are good. Some of these fingerings are not the easiest. They don't lay that well on the fretboard, or they have problems. But we are exploring. That's the important part here. Any melody that you're looking at, any melody that you're trying to learn, you want to try to find the different ways to find it, to play it on your fretboard. Because I remember the days of like barely deciphering a melody on a lead sheet, and then it seemed like wherever I would put my fingers and locating the notes, that's how I would play the melody, and then get stuck with playing the melody sometimes in a somewhat awkward way, simply because that's the only one I had ever figured out. And sometimes years later, I'm playing some other song, it's like, wow, why was I really playing it there? Because I had not spent the time to explore and figure out the different possibilities. So we could start also to wrap up that concept here on starting off from the fifth string. So starting on my G, and then the E flat, which is here. From the F is your from the E flat, and then finishing on the D. Okay, so we see similarities, and if you start playing the melody anywhere, that means you will always be able to finish it, because you know where to navigate. Because typically, if you only know how to play a melody one way, if something goes wrong, you somehow did not use the finger that you always use, or you somehow landed on the string that you don't normally land on, then you're gone. You panic, and then you have no idea where to finish the rest of the melody. So that way, you have all those different ways to go. Okay, so this first exploration here was taking advantage of the fact that the melody is in sequences, right? So we were making use of that and then simply moving that sequence down our fretboard. What if we wanted to play that in one position? Actually, no, wait. There's one more way that I wanted to discuss. It's using three adjacent strings. but still making use of the sequences. And that's actually something I would do often here is if I start here on this G, so I'm using the third, the second string again, and then finish on the first string. And then move that and start also with the third finger on that third string. Then move that, E flat, same third string, third finger, and then finish again with my same third finger on that same third string, but then my melody is slightly different here. So my starting point here is always on the third string, third finger, right? Again in time, 1, 2. E flat. Okay, that also would make sense if we use chords, like if I go say, since my chords are going down, it makes sense I would start my melody continuing in that same direction that I'm going to find my chords. But we're not there yet. I probably shouldn't even have done that because I don't want you guys to get confused. This is strictly about the melody played linearly, okay? So now, instead of moving our sequences down the neck, what would happen if we stayed in position? So I could do it, start again the same way. I started here from my G, but then now for my F, stay in that same position. Go like this. And then I'm still moving to, now we're going to have all our phrases different. The fingering is going to be different. So again, here from F, from E flat, and then finish from D. Okay, so what's slightly more difficult here is that in an effort to stay in the same position, we have to use different fingerings for all 4 of those phrases, even though, as I've discussed before, it's the same, more or less the same phrase. So all these would have been in that position if I'm thinking of my G minor area here being this. If I were, say, here, so I would have my starting on G, right? Starting on F, starting on E flat, I would go, and then starting on the D. Okay, that's a little well, that's down an octave for one thing, and it's again I'm using different fingerings. So you could do that. As you know, there you have 5 general shapes and regions on your fretboard. So you could take each and every one. Like I say, if I take this one, so my melody starting on G would be here. On F, starting on E flat, and finishing with the D. Okay, so that's basically the idea. So the 2 big options to recap here: make use of the sequence and use the same pattern or same fingering going down the neck. Even that way, explore the different fingerings and the different registers. And then doing what I just did now, which was stay in one position, which then will force you to use a different fingering for each one of those phrases. All right, so I'll stop here for today's video on the melody. Do spend time with this, and the hidden bonus is the more time you spend trying to figure out all your possibilities to play any melody, the more that melody is going into your subconscious. And the more you will be able to rely on it when you improvise or when when you do anything else with a song, whether it's going to be harmonizing it, finding chords, but really improvising. I mean, I'm always shocked, and I'll stop my my complaints here. I'm always shocked how very little people remember to think of the melody when they improvise or when they actually teach improvisation. I mean, nowadays when you teach improvisation, it's all about playing from the chords, and people often forget that we have a melody to use, so let's use it. Let's use the melody, let's get it very strongly in our minds, in our subconscious, so that we can always tap into it and or use it to keep our place within the form. Okay, so no more preaching for the day. So make sure you play that melody. Bye.